Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
From the powerhouse Blowtorch Signal Talk Radio 77 WABC and broadcasting from the center of the universe, New York City, welcome to your weekend and thank you for taking part in our journey that we call the Theater of the Mind on the Dr. Sky Experience. To the nation, the world, and I'm sure even out to the cosmos, your questions and comments with our special guest always at 1-800-848-9222. And while you're at it, why not download the WABC app? It'll make your listening experience that much more complete, and you can find out so much more about how to stay in touch with this incredible radio station. And I want to say thanks to our helmsmen, Vinny and Bill. They're the ones behind the scenes, as we say, not behind a curtain, but they're helping navigate all the questions that you folks have out there at 1-800-848-9222. As we continue here with our tonight's adventure, we're talking with Tom Harris, the Executive Director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He brings us great information because he's a guest, regular guest, because you and the emails that you send us, ladies and gentlemen. My email, drsky@wabcradio.com, if you'd like to comment. His website, icsc-canada.com. Welcome back, Tom Harris. Thanks for being with us as we journey into hour number 2. And we have many people that are
back.
Oh, thank you, sir. We have many people on the line. They've been very patient. Max in Manhattan, thanks for your patience. Good morning, and how are you doing this morning?
Thank you. Thank you for taking my call, Dr. Sky and Mr. Harris. What would you be able to enlighten us on concerning Maurice Strong? I believe he was involved with climate change, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a major driver of climate change at the United Nations, and he is, in fact, one of the originators of the whole climate scare. I mean, the bottom line is that whether he actually believed we had a climate emergency or not, he saw it as one of the ways to end up with a lot more government control and perhaps to actually share wealth around the world. You know, he was very much a globalist, that's for sure. So he's certainly one of the grandfathers of the climate scare.
Interesting. Wow, that's powerful stuff, Max. Anything else you'd like to add to the conversation? Because it's rare to get Tom, and, you know, we try to get him for at least 2 hours once a month. If you have any further comment, please continue.
Yeah, sure. You said as far as sharing the wealth around, that was one of Maurice Strong's focuses or foci. And in what way? I'm assuming in a negative way, you mean to share wealth.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, these people are globalists. They believe that we in the West got where we are by taking advantage of the world, so we should share our wealth. And that's why, in fact, with the UN climate treaties, you have an out clause for developing nations. You know, even though China is the biggest emitter by far, twice the emissions of the United States, they have an out clause that effectively allows them to never restrict emissions. And this goes back to the whole idea that somehow we in the West are guilty for the sins of our forefathers but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if the United States is crippled, think of all the aid that would otherwise go to Nigeria and all these countries that rely on the U.S. for aid. The last thing is that we should want is that the United States ends up bankrupt.
It's amazing. Max in Manhattan, thank you for your patience and being on hold. We do appreciate you and everybody else that's part of the conversation. That's what it's all about here on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Hey, Dr. Sky, I just did a calculation that I thought your listeners would be interested in. You know, people see on Star Trek, that it looks like the galaxy's pretty dense. It looks like stars are pretty close together. Well, it's interesting. The mass density of our part of the galaxy is about the same as if you took a area over the United States and 6 miles high, took that whole volume, and you put in it 28 bumblebees.
Wow.
So 28 bumblebees in the whole of the U.S. contiguous airspace is about the same as the density of our part of the galaxy. So space is a good name for it. I mean, that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons Arthur C. Clarke thinks that we'll never encounter extraterrestrials, because there's just so much space between any places where extraterrestrials could live.
Right.
So,
and let me add something to the conversation here, Tom. This is also interesting. Closer to home, where people, of course, live, obviously on planet number 3, if you had an apple and you were to take a look and peel back the surface skin on the apple, that's how precious and thin the actual breathable atmosphere is on the Earth before we move up into, say, places like the stratosphere. So, Max, lots of interesting things here, don't you think, on the Dr. Sky Experience? We keep the mind moving. And like I said, our goal is that we learn something new each time we bring our special guests on. So thank you, Max. Appreciate your time. Let's continue with the callers. Let's say good morning to Jerry in Pennsylvania. You have a conversational point about climate change is a hoax, if that's how the screeners have given that to me.
Yes,
please continue.
Yes. Hi, how are you both doing tonight? So I look at it as the big lie technique. I think they've used propaganda extraordinarily successful to the left, and the strategy was just basically make it such a sufficiently large and audacious falsehood and repeat it so persistently with conviction across so many multiple channels, in our society, that they've effectively deceived so many large segments of our population. Yes. And that is going to be extraordinarily hard for us to reverse. And right now, climate change is just on a brief hiatus, because every mechanism to keep it going is in place, unfortunately. It's going to ruin our middle class completely and push us towards communism. And I'll tell you, it is the most existential threat is the hoax. And Trump has it right, but he hasn't been able to even, because there's so many things to do, he hasn't been able to focus on it. He's one of the only people that seems to have gotten that successful message through. But when he's gone, I'm afraid I don't think we have anyone with the guts, the gravitas, and the ability to put it forth that Trump has. And we need a bunch of Trump-type people. We have a good guest on here who's got a good grip on the whole idea of it, not only the technical. But I'd like to ask the guest, how can we mend the political and the technical ideas that he possesses and get it across to the people? How are we going to get across to the people that this is a threat to our economy?
Jerry, you bring up something, and I don't mean to cut Tom off here, but I got to say this because it's full of inspiration here, at least from my side, and you, very powerful statements. If you look at all the schools, how do you reverse the education that they're getting on what they may not necessarily have as facts? I mean, the whole thing is a debate here. Right or wrong, left or right. But the truth of the matter is they've been teaching this, that the Earth's going to be evaporating because of the climate crisis. And how do you reverse that? So, Tom, pick up on what, Jerry's talking about. It's very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. There's a group that Jerry should look up. It's the CO2 Coalition. And, they have some really amazing stuff for children, for people that are doing homeschooling, and hopefully to get into the schools themselves. They have a video there that I wrote about recently. It's called, let's see, if you go to co2coalition.org, co2coalition.org, it's one of their videos under what they call Climate Chronicles. And it's called Climate, the Rise and Fall of Civilizations. And it's a 7-minute video. It is a beautiful video. I mean, the graphics are fabulous. You want to watch it several times. But what they show is that the two main sort of foundations of the climate scare, namely that higher temperatures are bad, and namely that CO2 rise is bad, they show those are both wrong. And if you look at the history of civilizations, you find that it was when it was warm that we had, the great cathedrals were built and people had prosperousness. So this video, if it can be spread everywhere, I'd love it to be made viral, because Climate, the Rise and Fall of Civilization, shows that the two foundations of the climate scare are totally wrong. It's the exact opposite.
Jerry, I appreciate you. You brought up something very interesting, because so many of the students, and I talk to so many myself, I do some education in schools, and I get challenged. I'm not as well adept as Tom is about the subject, but you have that revision or revulsion a lot of times from many of the teachers there to say, how dare you say anything other than what the status quo has been. So thank you, Jerry, for bringing up some obvious points that we need to look at here and maybe change our thinking. Continuing the callers. Yes, Tom, you're lighting it up here. This is amazing, and I appreciate it. Not that I would doubt it. Let's say good morning. He's been patient. Peter in Garden City, New York. You're on the air with Tom Harris. How are you?
Yes, global warming is 92.42% the hydrogen and water vapor.
Yeah, for sure. You're totally right. I mean, water vapor is the major greenhouse gas. They like to ignore it because then it makes CO2, which is a trace gas. It makes CO2 look significant, but water vapor is most of the warming cause. It's most of the greenhouse gas.
Peter, continue if you'd like. I appreciate your patience.
We want to do something about the water vapor, not just continue to go up into the air and come back as rain, because starting in 2075, it will be raining. By 2475, it will be raining 24 hours a day.
You know something interesting. When I worked in Canada's House of Commons, we had the Hydropower Association, who built dams and hydroelectric. They came in and they said, "Oh, you should use hydropower to reduce climate change." And I passed a note to one of the MPs who was questioning him. I said, "Why don't you ask him if we should drain all the reservoirs so that we reduce the amount of I almost said hydrogen, so that we reduce the amount of water vapor that's evaporating into the atmosphere? Because when you hold the water vapor in a large area at high altitude, you have much more evaporation than if you let it just flow through to the ocean." So the MP asked the hydropower guy, "Well, since water vapor is the greatest greenhouse gas, should we drain all your reservoirs?" Oh, there were some red faces.
Well, Peter, he brings up, and you bring up, Peter, excuse me, something very interesting. But I got to ask Tom, and this goes back to the entire audience. Is it true that if you had hydrogen-powered vehicles, I saw a period in time when hydrogen was a good thing, but apparently there was a Toyota vehicle, and I looked at it. I see them every once in a while. It said, a hydrogen-powered vehicle. But unfortunately, it looks like there's not many hydrogen refueling places for people. But what about hydrogen? Going along with Peter's saying about global warming, in his opinion, is mostly water vapor. Wouldn't that be a most incredible fuel to use?
Yeah, exactly. And when the temperature drops below freezing, you'd be slicking all your highways with ice. Because you're basically forming lots of water vapor from all the cars. So, I mean, and hydrogen is not an energy source anyways. I mean, a lot of people talk about it as if it could replace oil. Hydrogen is just a currency. It's like electricity. It's the way that we move energy around. You've got to make the hydrogen somehow. And the current way they make hydrogen mostly is by reforming methane, which is CH4. They can get it from hydrolysis, but then you have to get the electricity to do the hydrolysis. So the major way they get hydrogen now is from natural gas.
Interesting. Peter in Garden City, thanks for bringing up the water vapor situation. We do appreciate you. Have a great weekend. Moving on to Tony in Clifton, New Jersey. Good morning, Tony. Thank you, and I appreciate you as one of our regular callers. How are you doing today?
Hi, Dr. Sky. Hi, Tom. Great show tonight. I really find it very interesting, the format. I wanted to say that let me get my thoughts together. The people who are so concerned about global warming, as you said, do not look at the history. And the history shows there really hasn't been global warming. But also, when they're not paying attention to I always get on this, Dr. Sky, the UFOs and all the other things.
Yes.
Those things, to me, have more potential danger, maybe because of the movies I watched in the past. The day Mars invaded the Earth. The people, when they came to the Earth, the people actually dissolved and poof, they were gone, and then the Martians replaced them. So to me, the real threat, the real important thing to understand is the things we don't know about, instead of rehashing and lying about things that we already know and not telling the truth about those things.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that we really don't know a lot about is near-Earth asteroids. The astronaut from Apollo 9, Rusty Schweickart, he's always been involved with this possibility of us being impacted by a major asteroid. We think that it was an asteroid-type body that extinguished a lot of life on Earth when the dinosaurs were wiped out. And Schweikert and others like him have been trying to get the governments to take this a lot more seriously.
Absolutely.
Because as of a few years ago, and I don't know what the statistics are right this minute, but as of a few years ago, while we had various telescopes looking for near-Earth objects, they call them NEOs, we were looking for those that could possibly hit the Earth. We have quite a few in the Northern Hemisphere, but we had only one telescope in the whole Southern Hemisphere of the Earth. And if we had a major asteroid impact, that could be infinitely more dangerous than any possible climate change.
Well, Tom, you bring it up, and I want to address this to Tony. This is very interesting. Dr. Tholen he still is a good friend of mine. He discovered the Apophis asteroid, which is named in the honor of the Egyptian war god. And not to alarm people, but Apophis, which is a little bit longer than about 1,400 feet long, you could say a bit larger than the U.S., the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, the nuclear-powered carrier, but it's made of nickel iron. So here's what's happening, folks. Tony, this is interesting. It's moving close to the Earth on April the 13th of 2029. Now, some are saying that it'll pass into the region of where the geosynchronous satellites are, which is like within the 22,000-mile area. We still do not have, and not to be alarmist, we still do not have an absolute guarantee that that asteroid will follow that path, because if it goes through an area called this gravity keyhole, let's say it just passes us as we would hopefully expect, that when it returns around 2037, there could be a distortion to that. But you're right, Tony. The climate scare, as many people had, global warming, we need to look at what Tom's saying, and obviously the whole answer to this UFO situation. When are we ever going to be told? Tony, you get the last word. Thanks for listening.
I think what we really need, I don't think we have like the same kind of people dedicated to this stuff, which is really what Tom is saying. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we need. I think we're spending too much time on a lot of baloney and trying to, propagandize people instead of getting down to scientific things and understanding things we don't know. Guys, have a great Memorial Day weekend. I love your show, Dr. Sky. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tony. And going back to my days in the New York and New Jersey area, Clifton, New Jersey, we used to go to Rutt's Hut all the time. And I don't even know if it's still around, but if it is, a big shout out there. I guess it was on Route 46. And I had some of the best times there, including some damn good food. So, Tony Clifton, thanks for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience. Let's see as we continue. The phone calls, Tom, are just coming in like airplanes coming into big city airports. And I always like to say the role of the host is to try to be the best air traffic controller, bringing them in, sending them out, and make sure that we don't have a collision. So let's say good morning to Bernie in Staten Island. He wants to talk about E85. Good morning. You're on the air.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that in Brazil, since the late 70s, they have cars running on 100% alcohol, and they're running fine. I mean, a properly lubricated engine is going to run just fine on the alcohol. What I wouldn't do is leave any alcohol partial, like E10. We've got the E10, I think, use it year-round now. I wouldn't leave that in, say, a snowblower in the off-season because it does damage the carburetor. You run your equipment dry for the off-season, your lawnmower, you run that dry and make sure you drain the carburetor. Otherwise, it does gum it up and you'll be taking it apart or replacing it. I was in the business for years. But the 100% alcohol vehicles and flex fuel in Brazil, and they derive that from sugarcane. They have so much sugarcane.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Bernie, I got to ask you a question. Do you put stabilizer? I mean, I've seen it, and I've done this. We've had various vehicles, and some of them had to sit. So is a stabilizer a good thing to put in a vehicle that sits there?
I had collector cars that would sit in the winter here in the Northeast, and I would put stabilizer in, and I would leave the tank full.
Okay.
But I would also run them periodically in the winter, maybe once a month anyway, but I would keep the tank full. This way you didn't get the water condensation in there. And again, with this fuel stabilizer, now and by snowblower and my emergency generator, what I do is I'll put stabilizer in it. I let them run for a good 5 minutes, and then I drain them completely. So at least I know when they dried out, they had the stabilizer.
Well, Bernie,
was dry.
testifying to the thing that I'm telling people, that everybody learns something, or everybody hopefully learns something from each show. And you just proved the point that I learned something, and you qualified it. Tom, isn't that interesting? We learn about fuels and how to keep our vehicles running.
Yeah, Bernie's right. In fact, it's interesting. In Brazil, they not only use sugarcane, which is very much less expensive than corn, they actually can have their cars, they call them flex fuel cars. They can run on 100% gasoline, but they can also run on 100% ethanol and any mixture in between. So these are, they're light. They actually have about half of their light vehicle fuel consumption is ethanol. So you're right. Our U.S. cars are not designed for pure ethanol, but they are in Brazil.
That's incredible. So again, now the major consensus of everybody out there is, when the heck are gas prices for your vehicles ever going to go down? That's a whole nother subject, a political one, obviously, as we see things happening in the Middle East, and maybe changes very quickly. Who knows? Even that news could change as we're here live on the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, because obviously even here in Arizona, we're talking about 5+ for regular gas. We're seeing maybe $5.50 for premium, and diesel, we've even seen it almost $6.50. And our friends in California, ouch, Tom, imagine what that is for diesel out there.
Oh, wow. It's going to make everything more expensive, too, because, of course, you have to ship your food and your products to market. So it's going to have a massive inflationary impact.
Interesting. We see your calls coming in. We'll do our very best to get everybody on there to give an opportunity to speak your mind here on the Dr. Sky Experience. And when we come back in just a few moments after the next major heartbreak of the second hour, we'll continue to talk and maybe shift gears a little bit into some of the other subjects that Tom has an expertise in. And he, I'm sure, would like to comment on what's going on with the whole UAP situation, the latest government release, and maybe a little going down the path of space. We'll talk a little bit about the great successful launch today of Elon Musk's Starship 12 and the new iteration of their Starship rocket that's up on top. That would be probably the rocket, hopefully, when it works properly. Not that it isn't. We have a lot more tests to do. Will be the rocket that goes to the moon and the Starship that goes to Mars, and who knows, deep out into the solar system. Lots of interesting stories to have and report here. And the number, as always, in our Theater of the Mind, 1-800-848-9222. And like I mentioned before, why not download the WABC app? I've got it. You probably would like to take a look at it. And once you have it, you'll continue to want to use it because it gets you into all the other areas. It's like going into a special room, and now you're welcome to go into all the other rooms and explore. I'm Steve Cates, Dr. Sky. You're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience in what we call Theater of the Mind, where your calls and comments are always appreciated at 1-800-848-9222. We will be right back.